My name is Julie Wilson, and here is how my story begins quietly, almost boringly, with a lukewarm sandwich and a fluorescent lit lunchroom. Funny how the most ordinary moments can become the before in a life split cleanly into before and after. It was just after 2 p.m. I was halfway through a mediocre turkey sandwich, the kind that tastes like resignation, when my phone buzzed on the table beside me. I wiped my fingers on a napkin, glanced down, and saw a preview of the message from my boyfriend Joseph. One word stood out first: surprise. Then the rest of it hit me like whiplash. Surprise! Come meet my new girlfriend at Café Luna. I think it's time we all talk like adults. 2:30 works. I stared at the screen long enough for the edges of my vision to blur. New girlfriend. He said new girlfriend. I read the message twice, 3 times. My pulse throbbed behind my ears. I wasn't confused, I was stunned into a frozen kind of clarity. Joseph and I had been together 4 years, living together for 2. Our lease still had 8 months left. And now he wanted me to meet his new girlfriend at Café Luna, like this was some kind of team meeting about resource allocation. For a split second, I felt like I might throw up. The cafeteria went muffled, like someone had closed a door between me and the world. Chairs scraped. People laughed. None of it felt real. My first instinct was to call him and scream. My second was to block his number forever. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the casual cruelty of the smiley face he added at the end. Maybe it was the assumption that I'd just show up, shake the woman's hand, and congratulate them on destroying my life. Maybe it was that this wasn't a surprise. Not really. For the past 3 weeks, Joseph's late nights had turned into later nights. His phone lived permanently face down. He suddenly needed self-care Sundays that required him to disappear all day. He smelled like cologne he didn't own. He came home with a softness in his expression that wasn't for me. I wasn't paranoid, I was observant. My father used to say, hope for the best, document for the worst. I grew up watching him get financially gutted in his divorce, all because he hadn't prepared. I wasn't going to make the same mistake. So I had quietly collected screenshots, noted lies about his whereabouts, tracked patterns. But I hadn't confronted him, not yet. Not until I understood exactly how deep the rot went. Now I had my answer. I took a long breath, swallowed the burn in my throat, and texted back, "Be right there." Then I dialed the only person who could help me navigate the legal nightmare Joseph was about to drag me into. Noah Delgado, my friend from college, and a real estate attorney. He answered on the second ring. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. Noah always knew when something was wrong. I explained the situation in barely 90 seconds, the lease, the text, the new girlfriend, the invitation to a public meeting, as if I were an inconvenience to be scheduled. He paused. "He knows you two are both on the lease, right?" "Apparently not." "You both signed it." "Yes." "Equal responsibility?" "Yes." "And he's trying to introduce you to his new girlfriend while you still live together." Another long, loaded silence. Then Noah exhaled sharply. "I'm coming with you." "No, you don't have to, Julie. This is going to be interesting." 25 minutes later, I met Noah outside Café Luna. He wore a charcoal suit and carried a manila folder. I didn't need to ask what was inside: copies of the lease, our rental application, financial documentation. Facts, evidence, protection. He gave me a careful look. "You sure you want to do this?" "She invited me," I said. Or, he invited me. Noah nodded once. "Then let's go." Café Luna was warm and golden inside, all amber light and soft jazz, a place I had once loved. Now the air felt too thick to breathe. Joseph saw me first, and he smiled. Actually smiled like this was some friendly brunch. He sat at a corner table with a woman I instantly recognized from the hints I'd pieced together. The expensive curls, the curated elegance, the effortless confidence. Melissa Rowan, mid-30s maybe, designer watch, lips painted in a shade that said, "I take what I want." Julie, Joseph said brightly. "You came. I'm so glad we can be mature about this." He stopped when he saw Noah. "And the folder. And the suit." Melissa's smile faltered like a candle in a draft. Who's he?" "My attorney," I said evenly. Her posture snapped tight. Joseph blinked rapidly, his jaw flexing. "Why would you bring an attorney?" "Noah Delgado." Noah said, stepping forward, all business. "I understand there's been some confusion about current living arrangements. I'm here to clarify the legal situation." He slid the lease onto the table between their untouched lattes. Joseph's face drained. Melissa leaned forward, frowning at the paperwork. Noah continued, voice smooth and neutral. "Both parties signed a 24-month lease. 8 months remain. Both parties are equally responsible for the $2,400 monthly rent. Neither party can vacate without the other tenant's consent or the landlord's approval. Melissa's expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to dawning horror. Wait, she turned to Joseph. You said you lived alone. Joseph swallowed. We broke up, emotionally. My voice came out steady, even though my heart was battering itself against my ribs. Joseph, you slept in our bed last night. It's complicated. Melissa stood abruptly, color rising in her cheeks. You told me your ex was obsessed with you, that she couldn't accept the breakup. Joseph reached for her arm. Melissa, please. She jerked away like he'd burned her. You took me on a weekend trip last month. You made me believe. He tried again. Babe, I can explain. No, she snapped. You can't. And she walked out. No goodbye. No lingering look. Just the sharp click of heels fading into sunlight. Joseph stared at the empty doorway like something in him had cracked. Then he turned on me. Why would you do this? He hissed. Why couldn't you just let me have this? I blinked, stunned by the absurdity. Let you have what a secret girlfriend while I pay half your rent and wash your clothes. I was going to tell you, he said weakly. I just needed time to figure out the logistics. The logistics of me subsidizing your new relationship. He didn't answer. He couldn't. I stood, smoothly, quietly, because I'd already said what mattered. I'll see you at home, I said. We need to talk about the lease. Then I turned and walked out, leaving Joseph Wilson with a cooling latte, an empty chair where his new girlfriend used to be, and the attorney he never expected me to bring. When I got home that night, I expected a confrontation, shouting accusations, maybe even Joseph packing his things in a dramatic, self-righteous spiral. What I didn't expect was normal. Utterly disturbingly normal. He was in the kitchen, sautéing vegetables, humming to himself, like he hadn't watched his new girlfriend walk out on him 2 hours earlier. Like he hadn't detonated our relationship with a single text message. Like I hadn't shown up with an attorney and dismantled the entire fantasy he'd built. He glanced over his shoulder when I walked in. Hey, he said casually, you want some dinner? It was almost funny. Almost. No, I said, keeping my voice even. I'm not hungry. Suit yourself. He went back to cooking as if the world existed in some parallel reality only he could see. I retreated to the second bedroom, my new room, apparently. I'd already moved some essentials there earlier in the day when the bad feeling in my stomach had turned into something worse. Maybe I had known something like this was coming. Maybe some part of me had expected the blow. The couch had been my plan, but I needed distance. A door with a lock. Space to exhale without feeling his presence pressing against me like humidity. I worked quietly, slipping my laptop and clothes into the room. I wasn't running. I was preparing. By midnight, I heard him go to bed. In our bed. He didn't knock. He didn't call my name. He just existed in silent delusion. And I let him. Day 3. It took him 3 days to acknowledge anything was wrong. I was in the kitchen making coffee when he wandered in, rubbing sleep from his eyes, like a teenager who'd overslept. So he started leaning against the counter. I've been thinking about it. That sentence alone made my stomach tighten. I think you should move out. I turned, slowly, calmly. Excuse me. It just makes more sense, he said, gesturing vaguely. You're the one who made things weird. I don't have anywhere else to go, and clearly we can't live together after everything you did. Everything I did. There it was, the shift, the pivot, the narrative rewrite he needed to avoid facing himself. What I did, I repeated. You mean bringing an attorney to the meeting you invited me to? His jaw tightened. You embarrassed me. I let out a breath that tasted like disbelief. You brought me to meet your new girlfriend while we still lived together. Joseph, what did you expect me to do? Smile. Thank you for the trauma. He waved a hand dismissively. You're being dramatic. I was trying to be civilized. I actually laughed. Short, sharp. You texted me a smiley face while blindsiding me. His nostrils flared. I talked to my mom, he said, as if that settled something. She agrees you should be the one to leave. It's only fair since you ruined everything. Ah, yes. His mother, the woman who once told me my career in education was cute and temporary, like a hobby I'd eventually abandon to be more useful to her son. I set my mug down. I am not leaving. We're both on the lease. If you want out, you can find a replacement tenant or pay the early termination fee. His expression cracked. What fee? 3 months' rent. He swallowed. I can't afford that. Neither can I. Then you find somewhere else to stay. No. That single word, calm, firm, final, snapped something inside him. You're trying to control me, he shouted. You're trapping me here. This is financial abuse. I stared at him, stunned by how quickly he flipped himself into the victim role. I'm not paying your share of the rent, I said. I'm not pretending any of this is my fault, and I'm not leaving. He stormed away, slamming his bedroom door so hard a picture frame rattled. 5 minutes later, I heard his voice through the wall, then his mother's voice, tinny through speakerphone. "She's refusing to leave," he whined. "She's trying to control me." "Oh, sweetheart," she said sympathetically. "This is exactly what I warned you about. Put her on." I walked into the hallway, opened the second bedroom door, and met Joseph's eyes through the cracked doorway. He shoved the phone toward me like a weapon. I shook my head. I'm not having this conversation. Then I closed my own door. Day 5. The pounding on the apartment door startled me. It was nearly 9 p.m., and I was working from home, lost in spreadsheets, when the banging started. I opened the door to find a man I'd never met, disheveled, red-eyed, furious. "You," he said, pointing at me. "You cost me $3,000. He was talking about Melissa's boyfriend. Or rather, Melissa's other boyfriend. "I'm sorry," I said. "The trip I took her on. The jewelry. I thought I was dating a single woman. Instead, I was funding your boyfriend's affair." I blinked. "She didn't tell me about you either. I found out the same day you did." He deflated rage, turning into something like heartbreak. "She played us both." "Seems like it," I said softly. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I want my stuff back. Gifts I gave her." "She's not here right now," I said. "And honestly, good luck." He nodded, once defeated, and left without another word. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. The next day, things turned darker. Joseph filed a complaint with our landlord. A formal one, claiming I was harassing him, monitoring him, making him feel unsafe in his home. The property manager called me, sounding exhausted. "Julie, your co-tenant has made some claims. I need to ask you a few questions." "What claims exactly?" "That you're following him around the apartment, recording him, making threatening remarks." I nearly laughed. "I've barely spoken to him in 5 days. I made a schedule for shared spaces so we wouldn't even run into each other." A long sigh. "Off the record, I've seen this before. I'm going to document the complaint, but unless he provides evidence, it won't go anywhere." "Evidence." "Right." That night, for my own protection, I installed a discreet camera in the common area legal, since I lived there too. It wasn't pointed at his bedroom or bathroom, just the living room and kitchen. Good thing I did. Because the next morning, the footage captured Joseph rifling through my mail, opening my credit card statement, taking photos. Why? I didn't know yet. But I did know this. He was building something. A story. A narrative. A trap. And he thought I wouldn't see it coming. By the time the camera caught Joseph going through my mail, I no longer questioned whether he was acting out of panic or cruelty. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he was escalating, and I needed to stay 10 steps ahead. For years, I had trusted him with everything, our finances, our home, my routines, my vulnerabilities. Now every one of those things felt like a weapon he knew how to use. And he was using all of them. The smear campaign begins. 2 days after the mail incident, Joseph's best friend's number flashed across my phone. I didn't answer. A moment later, a voicemail came through, 30 seconds of venom wrapped in fake concern. "Julie, you need to leave Joseph alone. He's scared for his safety. This is turning into harassment. Stop recording him before we involve the police." I replayed the message twice. Scared for his safety. Involve the police. It would have been laughable if it weren't so sinister. They were building a narrative one in which I was the problem, the unstable ex who couldn't handle the breakup, the woman who snapped, the woman who refused to move out, the woman who turned violent. When lies are repeated often enough, they begin to calcify into something dangerously close to truth. I added the voicemail to my documentation folder. The friend confrontation. On day 7, while I was working from home, I heard Joseph's voice in the living room. Not raised, not angry. Something worse measured. Performative. "She monitors me," he said loudly, clearly wanting me to hear. I can't breathe without her tracking it. I rolled my eyes, but a cold twinge crept into my spine. Seconds later, footsteps approached. I stepped into the hallway just as Joseph's friend, a woman I'd met a handful of times, glared at me from the couch. She crossed her arms. "You need to leave Joseph alone." "I live here," I said calmly. "He says you're stalking him, recording him, controlling his movements." "I have a camera in shared space for my protection," I said. "Not his. And I don't monitor anything." "That's not what he said." She stepped closer, inches from my face. "You're a controlling nightmare. No wonder he found someone better." I almost laughed. Someone better dumped him because he lied to both of them. Her face twisted and she stormed out, slamming the door. 5 minutes later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Leave him alone or we're calling the police." Screenshot. Saved. He wasn't just escalating. He was recruiting. Joseph's mother enters the war. I thought the next round of madness would come from Joseph. I was wrong. It came from her. I walked in one evening to find Joseph's mother sitting at our kitchen table like she owned the deed to the building. Her handbag perched neatly beside her, her posture perfect and rigid. She didn't smile. "We need to talk," she said. "How did you get in?" I asked. "My son let me in. This is his home." "It's mine too." She slid a sheet of paper across the table, a mock legal document written in bold fonts and officious language. "You will transfer your lease rights to Joseph," she said crisply, "and pay the 3 months of rent for transition. In exchange, we will not pursue a harassment case." I stared at the paper. This wasn't a document. It was a threat wearing a cheap costume. "This is ridiculous," I said. "It's generous," she replied, "given the emotional damage you've caused." "The emotional damage I've caused?" I asked, incredulous. "He was cheating on me while living here. That is his personal life." She folded her hands primly. "You don't own him." I felt something cold and razor-sharp settle inside me. "Get out," I said softly. She blinked. "Excuse me. You're in my home without my permission. Leave. Now." "You ungrateful—" "Leave," I repeated. She left, but not before promising to show everyone the kind of woman I really was. I didn't doubt it. The public execution. That night, Joseph's mother posted a long, dramatic paragraph on Facebook. She never used my name, but she didn't need to. Her daughter-in-law figure, a controlling ex, had used financial manipulation and monitoring devices to trap her son in an unsafe living environment. Hashtags. Domestic violence. Awareness. Break the silence. Protect our men. The comments poured in. "You're so strong for speaking up. Men can be victims too. She sounds dangerous. You should file a restraining order." Mutual friends messaged me. "Is this about you and Joseph? Are you okay? Did something happen? I didn't think you were like that." I typed responses, deleted them. Typed again, deleted again. I wasn't going to fight a smear campaign with emotional paragraphs on social media. I had evidence. Evidence doesn't need followers. Noah's warning. 2 weeks into the nightmare, Noah came over with takeout and a look on his face I didn't like. He set down the food and folded his arms. He's trying to build a case. I know, I said. "No," he insisted. "Julie, listen. He's aiming for a restraining order." I stopped breathing. A restraining order. Against me. Filed by the man who cheated on me, lied about it, and now wanted me out of the home I pay for. "Can he do that?" I asked. "With what he has now, no. But he's trying to create documentation, claims, witnesses, posts, messages. He's setting the stage." My stomach twisted. "He's dangerous," Julie Noah said quietly. "Not physically, strategically." It was the first time anyone had put words to the feeling crawling beneath my skin. I wasn't dealing with heartbreak. I was dealing with ambition, with entitlement, with a man who had realized he could lose everything and was throwing everyone, including me, into the fire to save himself. The hidden footage breakthrough. The camera continued recording. Each day, more evidence piled up. Joseph pacing the apartment, making dramatic statements about being watched. Joseph opening my mail. Joseph rehearsing his fearful victim story on the phone. But on day 14, as I sat reviewing clips, something new appeared. A phone call. Joseph stood by the counter, whispering urgently. "Yeah, she won't leave," he said. "I told the landlord she follows me around." "Yeah, I know it's not true, but how else am I supposed to get her out?" "She can't stay here." "No, she doesn't have proof. She's too soft to do anything." The words tightened something in my chest. Soft. He thought I was soft. On the screen, he huffed a frustrated sigh. "Look, I just need her gone. She'll crack eventually. She always caves." I paused the video. "No, not this time. Not ever again." The twist Noah didn't expect. 3 days later, Noah showed up with a look I had never seen on him, equal parts triumph and disbelief. "I found something," he said. "What?" Joseph lied on the rental application. I blinked. "About what?" Noah opened his laptop and turned the screen toward me. "He has a child," Noah said. "A 7-year-old daughter. Lives with his ex-wife." The world seemed to tilt. Joseph, a father, for 4 years. And he had never told me. My throat dried. How does this help me? This, Noah said, tapping the application is material misrepresentation. Grounds for unilateral lease termination. Fraud. The landlord can void his portion of the agreement, leaving you in full control. It took a moment for the meaning to settle into my bones. Joseph had built an entire campaign meant to destroy me. But he had built it on a lie big enough to destroy himself. I didn't sleep the night Noah told me about Joseph's daughter. The revelation sat in my chest like a stone, heavy, cold, and impossibly dense. 4 years together. 4 years of believing I knew the man I lived with. 4 years of sharing a home, a life, a future he'd described with intricate detail. Yet he had concealed something as monumental as a child. Not a passing omission, not a mistake, a choice, a deliberate erasure of part of his identity in order to present himself as someone cleaner, simpler, easier to love. When I finally dragged myself out of bed the next morning, the apartment felt different. Not smaller, hollower, as though the walls themselves now understood I had been living beside a stranger. Noah picked me up just before 10. Neither of us said much during the drive. There was nothing left to analyze, nothing left to unpack. The facts were loud enough to drown everything else out. Joseph had lied about having a dependent on a legal document. And not a small lie, a lie that could void an entire lease. The leasing office was quiet when we walked in, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. The property manager, Mr. Olson, sat behind his desk sorting through paperwork. He looked like a man who spent his days refereeing disputes he had no desire to be part of. When he saw me, he sat up straighter, maybe expecting another complaint from Joseph. Another dramatic retelling about the fragile man supposedly being terrorized by his ex. But when Noah set the rental application and printed records on his desk, Olson's entire demeanor shifted. "There has been a material misrepresentation by one of the tenants," Noah said, brisk and steady. "We're here to provide documentation." Olson reached for the papers slowly, like they were something fragile or dangerous. His eyes skimmed the lines, then flicked back up at me. "Ms. Wilson," he said carefully, "this is serious." I nodded. "Yes, it is." Noah continued. "He listed himself as single, no dependents. But he has a 7-year-old daughter living primarily with his ex-wife." A beat of silence. Olson held the application between his fingers like it might burn him. "That's not a minor omission." "And that's not all," Noah added, pulling up a video clip on his tablet. "There's additional concerning behavior." He turned the screen toward Olson. Joseph appeared on the footage, entering the kitchen, scanning the room, then gripping my mail like it was incriminating evidence. He opened my credit card statement, photographed it, put it back, and pretended nothing had happened. Olson watched the clip twice. The second time his jaw tightened. "This," he said, voice flat, "changes things." I felt something subtle and unfamiliar inside me. Relief. Not victory, not triumph. Just the quiet confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. That the truth was finally stepping into daylight. "What does this mean?" I asked. Olson exhaled through his nose. "Given the misrepresentation on the application combined with the pattern of complaints and what appears to be documented misconduct, I can initiate eviction proceedings against him for cause." I blinked. "Against him?" "Yes." Olson nodded slowly as if making sure I fully understood. "Not you. You've cooperated every step of the way. He's the one who lied. He's the one filing inconsistent complaints. He's the one tampering with mail. Legally, he is the liability here, not you." My chest tightened, not with fear, but with a strange, surreal disbelief. "In terms of next steps," he continued, "I can offer you 2 options. 1, take over the lease as the sole tenant. Your income more than qualifies. 2, terminate the lease early without penalties given the circumstances. Terminate. End it. Walk away clean. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that possibility until it landed in front of me like a lifeline. "I'll terminate," I said quietly. "I want a fresh start." Olson nodded. "I'll begin the paperwork. Expect the eviction to be served within a week." A week? 7 days until Joseph's facade cracked beyond repair. When Noah and I walked out of the leasing office, the sunlight felt different. Sharper. Warmer. I hadn't realized how long I'd been breathing in the stale air of fear until that moment. "You okay?" Noah asked gently. "I don't know," I said, "but I think I will be." We drove back to the apartment, and I spent the rest of the day boxing up my belongings. Not all of them, just the ones that mattered enough to come with me into the next chapter. Clothing, photos, books, my grandmother's tea set. I worked quietly, aware that every second brought me closer to the moment Joseph's world would tilt. 2 days later, the police showed up at my workplace. 2 uniformed officers standing at the front desk asking for me. Someone snickered behind a cubicle wall. Someone else whispered my name in that hushed, scandal-hungry tone people use when they want drama without consequences. For a moment, I felt the world tilt. "Ms. Wilson," one officer said gently, "we received a report that you may have stolen jewelry belonging to your ex-partner." I stared. I haven't touched his things. He nodded, almost sympathetically. "We figured. But we need to follow protocol. Do you have any documentation?" I pulled out my phone, opened the nanny cam folder, and showed them the footage of Joseph packing his own belongings, touching his own jewelry. placing them in boxes himself. I showed them timestamps, dates, clear, unbroken footage. The older officer watched in silence, then exhaled. "I've been doing this job 20 years, he said. "I can usually tell when someone's lying." He gave me a tired, reassuring look. "You're not the bad guy here." It shouldn't have mattered. It shouldn't have made a difference. But hearing that from someone whose job was to discern truth from chaos felt like a thread snapping loose from the rope Joseph had tried to strangle me with. The report was dismissed. No follow-up, no charges. Later that evening, as I carried another box to my car, I thought about Joseph, his mother, his lies, his theatrics, the way he weaponized victimhood to disguise his own guilt. And for the first time in weeks, I realized something simple and devastating. It was almost over. For both of us. The next morning, the eviction notice was served. I wasn't home when it happened, but the camera recorded everything. The pounding on the door, the envelope delivered. The way Joseph opened it with the arrogance of someone expecting to be vindicated, only for his face to collapse into panic. He screamed at the property manager, cursed him out, threatened legal action, accused everyone in the building of conspiring against him. But nothing he said mattered. The truth had finally outrun him, and the countdown had begun. The day I officially moved out, the apartment felt like a ghost, quiet, stale, and stripped of the illusion that had held it together for 4 years. My boxes were already stacked neatly by the door, labeled and taped, waiting for the moving van. I had taken what mattered and left everything else behind, including the version of myself who had once tried to make that place a home. Joseph wasn't there when I began loading the first few boxes into my car. A small mercy. I didn't need another screaming match or another performance of wounded innocence. I didn't need to see the man who had made me feel invisible in my own life. But of course, the universe is rarely that generous. He walked in as I came back for the next load, stopping short when he saw the half-empty living room. His eyes flicked from the boxes to me, and then to the eviction notice still lying open on the counter, as if he needed a visual reminder of everything coming undone. "So you're actually leaving," he said, voice flat. "Yes," I replied. "I am." "You're abandoning the place." "I'm ending the lease. Legally. With permission. Because of your lies." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Calm truth has a way of carving deeper wounds than yelling ever could. He scoffed, running a hand through his hair. "You're unbelievable. You ruin my life and then just walk away like nothing happened." "I didn't ruin your life, Joseph," I said quietly. "You did that all by yourself." Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, or fear. But it didn't matter. I wasn't there to read him anymore. I wasn't there to make sense of his choices. I was simply there to leave. I carried another box outside. When I returned, someone was standing in the doorway. His mother. Of course. She blocked the entrance like a wall made of disappointment and misplaced rage. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said, voice dripping with accusation. "I'm not proud," I said. "I just want this to be over. You've destroyed him. He lost his girlfriend, his apartment, his stability. He has to move back home at 31 because of you." I stared at her, unable to believe how sincerely she could say something so upside down. Because of me, he lied on a legal document. He filed false complaints. He staged a smear campaign. He cheated. He tampered with mail. He created this mess. She shook her head like she was watching a tragic play. "You pushed him to that. If you had just moved out like a decent person." "No," I cut in. "I'm done being the decent person for someone who treats me like a dumping ground." Her eyes widened at my tone. Maybe no one had ever spoken to her that way before. Maybe that was the problem. "Excuse me," she snapped. "I'm done," I repeated simply. I don't owe him my home. I don't owe him my silence. I don't owe him my future. She stepped aside, stiff and trembling with indignation, and I brushed past her with my last box. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. My new apartment, a small studio across town, smelled faintly of fresh paint and unfamiliar beginnings. I set my boxes along the wall, stood in the middle of the empty room, and let the quiet settle around me like a blanket. Too quiet at times. Some nights I fell asleep on the couch instead of the bed because the bed felt too big, too still, too symbolic of everything I'd lost and everything I was supposed to rebuild. But it was mine, every inch of it. No one else's shadow seeped into the corners. No one else's voice echoed down the hallway. No one else's lies lived within its walls. It was the first place that had belonged solely to me in years. And yet the aftermath trailed behind me like fog. Joseph's eviction went through faster than I expected. It was now on his record, something that would follow him every time he applied for housing, a permanent stain, left not by my actions, but his own choices. He and his mother managed to secure a new place in a less desirable neighborhood, but even that required her to co-sign. Then there was Melissa. She reached out to me once through a private message. Not hostile, just exhausted. She told me Joseph was telling people he'd been trapped in a toxic relationship and she was the woman who rescued him. That he had spun a whole new fantasy to explain away everything. Her message ended with, "He lied to both of us. I'm sorry you were dragged into it." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Friends split into two camps, those who believed Joseph's narrative and those who had the decency to ask for the truth. I lost some people I'd known for years, but the strange thing was, it didn't hurt as much as I feared. Losing people who were willing to believe a lie so easily didn't feel like loss. It felt like clarity. Therapy helped. Not in dramatic, epiphany-filled sessions, just steady conversations about self-worth boundaries and the quiet violence of betrayal. My therapist explained that betrayal doesn't always ignite rage. Sometimes it hollows you out. Sometimes the anger comes later, long after the damage is done. For now, I mostly felt empty. Not broken, not furious. Just emptied out like the emotional center of gravity had quietly shifted, and I was still learning where my footing was. 1 month later, I found myself standing by the window of my new place, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. I thought about the apartment I'd left behind, the memories tucked into drawers, the laughter embedded in the old walls, the blinds we'd installed together, the plant he always forgot to water. Sometimes grief comes disguised as nostalgia. Sometimes nostalgia disguises itself as longing. But I didn't long for him. I longed for the version of myself who had believed she was loved. The truth was simple. I survived him. And survival isn't always triumphant. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like eating dinner alone at a wobbly kitchen table. Sometimes it sounds like silence in a place where no one's yelling your name. Sometimes it feels like waking up and realizing you didn't dream about him at all.